It was good, y'all. It's your boy JD6 here with my man. Shout out to KC Sports Authority. Make sure y'all go check that podcast out, man.
You heard the man. And welcome into another episode of the KC Sports Authority podcast. You can find us over here on YouTube, where you can watch the show, see our lovely faces over here. Make sure you do hit that like and subscribe button below. Be one of the 1,000+ subscribers we have now on the podcast. Thank you so much for all those listeners and subscribers and followers out there. We are so grateful for the support you've been giving us. And we're super excited to see how many more of you jump on board with us during this KU basketball season, as that is what we're talking tonight. So again, if you haven't done so yet, hit that like and subscribe button. Come back each week for KU basketball. Maybe it's still a little bit of KU football. Definitely some Chiefs content, some Royals offseason content, as well as our weekly game day gambles sports betting episodes. As now we have college football, NFL, college basketball, and NBA to find some winning bets on. So there's a lot of content on the channel every single week. And the best way to know what's going on is to subscribe right here on YouTube. You can also hit us up on any of our social medias at KCSA Pod below. Keegan Russell, JB Merker, and Austin Eckert with you guys tonight, here to talk some KU basketball. And before we even get into this episode, I wanted to throw this out there to you guys, the listeners. As the season gets underway, I would love to, as we do some of these weekly episodes, feature some of your questions and takes on the podcast. So if you do have any questions about the KU basketball season, the roster, the schedules, expectations, predictions, anything like that, feel free to send them our way. You can put them in the comments here below. You can DM any one of us on Twitter. You can DM the podcast on Twitter at KCSA Pod. Send us a tweet, hit us up on Facebook, whatever it is. Would love to start incorporating some of those questions into our recordings each week. So that being said, we do want to talk some KU basketball. Now the preseason is officially over. The exhibition games are behind us. So first thing up, fellas, whether you watched all of these two games or not, it is time for some preseason overreactions. Austin, let me start with you. Based on these first two exhibition games, thoughts on the season?
I didn't get to watch much of the first exhibition game. I forgot what I was doing.
It was ugly.
I was kind of out and about, so I watched a little bit of it, but not all of it. So I don't really have much of a take. I just kind of kept up with the score and saw that Arkansas was dominating KU. So I was like, whatever. But I do know that Arkansas was playing pretty aggressive all night long against them. So and they also had Hunter and Rylan out. So those were two big losses for KU that night. But, kind of just forwarding to the Washburn game last night, I had a chance to be there. I got to see the new renovations as well. Those were very nice.
Are they better seeing them in person than how they've been described over Twitter the last couple of weeks?
I would think so. I mean, I don't mind what they call the plywood, whatever it is on the corners. I don't really mind it at all. I mean, like half of the time people aren't sitting in those sections anyways. So
they're an eyesore, that corner. Before.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's probably why they put that up. So I don't mind it. I thought the design on them was pretty cool. The beware the fog and pay heat. I thought that was nice. The corner video boards are kind of interesting because you know how you can like kind of keep up with like how much everybody has scored throughout the game on the main one. You got to look in the corner video boards for that. So I don't know if I really like that, but it is what it is.
So they changed that.
Yeah, I changed it.
I don't like that at all.
No, I mean I wasn't a big fan of it either. But last night though, I
guess before the game, how did the student section being closer to the court look? Could you feel it? Could you notice it?
Yeah, I noticed it. Like the front rows were much closer. There was there's plywood in front of the student section. They took that down. I thought that was nice. I mean, I don't think it's that much of a difference, but you can tell it's a little bit different. So I definitely felt a little bit closer to the action. I was kind of like 7 rows up from the front row. But I definitely noticed a difference. But Washburn, though, loved what I saw. I know everybody out there is going to say, oh, it's a D2 team, who cares? But Washburn's one of the best D2 teams in the country. I believe they're coming into this season, they're 10th best D2 team in the country.
Yeah,
so
like that.
Yeah. So, they should be a very good basketball team, for what they've got going on. But loved what I saw. Got so excited to see all the new guys get their first baskets inside Allen Fieldhouse. I was, first thing I want to start off with, I was pretty surprised to see David Coit start last night. I don't know if I expected that.
The one I texted you guys. I said it was going to be Rakeem Passmore, and it ended up being David Coit getting that spot. But.
Yeah. Well, man, he took advantage of his opportunity last night, didn't he? He looked phenomenal. He started off hot and kept it consistent all game long. I don't, I tweeted this out last night, but I was like, I don't know if there's like a fan favorite type of play. I don't know if there's like one fan favorite type of player on this team. There's like so many to choose from, which we'll of course get into, but Coit looked great. Obviously Zeke Mayo looking great as well. Super excited to see what he does this season. AJ got out there, got some minutes, put up some really nice baskets. Rylan did really well in the 3-point shooting.
Yeah, it was great.
I was really looking forward to seeing what he could do out there. And, 3-point shooting was a problem for KU last season. So to see KU do so well in the 3-point shooting, I believe they had like 30 plus 3-point attempts.
They did. Yep.
Yeah, that was
off the top of my head, I don't know, but I'm sure that was less. That happened less than 5 times last year.
Yeah. So to see KU do well in that category was great. My only things that I'm a little worried about were like the ball movement. It was good, but it wasn't great all the time. There were some turnovers that can easily be avoided, but that's what exhibition games are for. They help you get you ready for that, and they'll have some time before next week to get that better. But ball movement was great, but not the best at times. Flory looked great. He had some blocks. He got the crowd on their feet. KJ looked great. Had a couple of blocks too. Made some really nice plays on both ends of the court. But it was just a really good night. And then towards the end of the game, we gave up maybe more garbage time points than I had anticipated. But I think KU kind of just softened a little bit towards the end, which is understandable, I suppose. But you don't want to go too hard. This is a D2 team that they were going up against. But Washburn, though, like I said, they're one of the best D2 teams in the country, and I think they're going to have a great season. And I know their coach is a KU alum as well, played under Self.
Shout out to former Jayhawk Brett Ballard. He's got a good squad, good coach. He's been developing that program the last several years, and they are definitely at a good spot.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it was just a really good night. I liked what I saw, but obviously there's a lot that KU can clean up. But we'll come to find out next week. Just how good they really look. Howard, obviously a team that we played 2 years ago in the NCAA tournament, dominated them, but it's a team that they can make to the NCAA tournament. So I don't expect KU to take them lightly. But you have to feel good about just with the team and with where they're at and what they can do.
Yep. JB, I know you didn't catch much of all of the last 2 games, but do you have any takeaways from what you have seen on how the first 2 games went or expectations for the season based on these 2 games?
Okay, so I watched the whole Arkansas game, so that might be why we're witnessing pessimistic JB. It's a new era in this podcast. It's pessimistic.
No, this is over. Well, I hear you. Sorry, let me. I'm going to put it in.
Well, I'm just saying. All right, look to everybody on KU Twitter saying, "Calm down," and I see you, Austin. Calm down. It's a exhibition game. Means nothing. Okay.
Well, I don't know if it means nothing, but
there are people that are saying that. But it means something to me, especially and against Arkansas. I think Arkansas might as well be the new Kentucky. I think Coach Cal going there, it feels like we lost to Kentucky, which
it did feel a lot like that. I give you that for sure.
Isn't half the Kentucky roster, didn't half the roster follow him to Arkansas anyway?
Oh yeah.
So we basically lost to Kentucky, so I'm pissed. You guys, for anyone that doesn't understand, okay, I became a KU fan when I moved to Kansas from St. Louis, and thank God I got out of St. Louis. And I didn't like I didn't know what it was. I didn't understand how Kansas basketball was so big. I wasn't a sports guy, ironically enough. Came to Kansas and it changed my life, and here we are. We're on a sports podcast together, but the first loss I ever witnessed was to Kentucky in that darn game, the Champions Classic game in 2011. It was the first loss I ever saw, and I know it was quick on the season because it was Champions Classic very early in the season. But I saw that and I was like,
It just left a sour taste in your mouth.
I hate Kentucky. And then, of course,
Filled you with rage, boiling rage.
We go on to lose to Kentucky in the championship game of the year, and another thing is I didn't even realize how spoiled I was in my first year at KU to go all the way to the championship game. Like, that doesn't happen every year in March Madness. The 1 seeds don't always get that far. The 2 seeds don't always get that far. So I just have this hatred for anything that's related to Kentucky. We looked awful in that game. So to finally get to the point, I guess, sorry, but like we looked awful. I mean, we just looked like we didn't put in the effort. We looked like we got punched in the mouth and we couldn't respond. We looked disjointed. I understand that the big asterisk is we didn't have Hunter. And yeah, we didn't have Ryland, and he's going to be a huge part of this offense. No Shaq Moore. No El Marco Jackson for the whole season. So, like, these are 4 of our top 7, 8 players or whatever that were out that were out of that game and not a factor. I understand all that. I still say we should have been able to respond better than we did. Hell, we didn't even respond at all, in my opinion.
Yeah, but it's a bad game when DeJuan scores 20-plus points. Nothing against DeJuan, but DeJuan scored 20-plus points, but as a game, he had a bad game.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
That's when I told you in our last week episode that I wasn't going to take that game seriously because one team was going to take it more seriously than the other. And it was clear Arkansas took it way more seriously. We didn't really run much offense. We just kind of went out there and did our thing. And again, I didn't. That's why I didn't take a lot away from that game, other than, all right, if this was week 1 of the season, this is bad. But I don't think Bill Self was really doing it. I think he was just trying things, throwing guys out there. I mean, I think McDowell and Ricky's Passmore ended up playing the most minutes on the wing compared to Zeke and Storr. So yeah, I didn't take too much from it, other than, wow, that was not a good effort against a really good team. But again, as a preseason game, I don't think they were going in there with a lot of expectations to show much.
I don't know. I felt like Bill Self taking 2 timeouts.
I'll tell you what. Who took it the most serious was the TV announcers. Those guys were treating this like it was the Champions Classic.
That's what they were saying throughout the whole game. What did they say multiple times? They were like, "Wow, like I know this is just an exhibition game, but these 2 teams are playing like it's in the Final Four." And I'm like, dude, they're actually right. I'm sorry. I fully agreed with what they were saying. Yeah. That if you watch the game, both teams were trying hard. Bill Self was upset. It's like he held his composure better than he has in past games. But like, man, you could tell both teams really wanted this. I will take that to the grave with me. We just fell short. And of course it has to come against Arkansas and Coach Cal. And I had to hear all about it from my coworker at Channel 9 News who went to Arkansas and, just can't stop smiling at the fact that KU cannot beat Arkansas to save their lives. Arkansas is the new Kentucky. I hate it.
But I believe the
hot take of the week: Arkansas is the new Kentucky.
I believe the students for Arkansas, I believe they said, the commentators talked about it, they camped out for days.
They did.
Yeah,
for a freaking exhibition game.
Like, actual camping.
Like, what are we doing? I was like, what? I was like, no way. I mean, I get it. It's number 1 Kansas. But
yeah, it's number 1 Kansas. That's what they said.
Again, that's why to me, I didn't put a lot of stock in it because clearly this was – I mean, if you think about where Arkansas is as a program compared to where Kentucky's been, this was more important for Arkansas to drive up their anticipation this season. So yeah, credit to them. They came out, did great. DJ Wagner looked incredible considering he couldn't score the ball at all last year. Boogie Flan looked fantastic, which was also a concern because DeJuan didn't do much. But again, I don't think I disagree with JB. I don't think the effort level on KU side was even close to matching what Kentucky was trying to do, outside of maybe one or two guys. But sorry, I don't take much from that. My preseason overreaction, the biggest one I think I'm going to say is, let's make it rain some freaking threes, man. 15 threes in that Washburn game. Again, I know exhibition game they were getting a lot of great looks. Not even a lot of them were open looks. Diggy Coit was firing. AJ Storr took a bunch of shots, didn't make all of them, but Rylan Griffin hit a couple threes. Zeke hit a couple threes. I think that is my overreaction of, man, if this is what we get to see from KU basketball this season, sign me up, and I'm looking forward to cutting down the nets in March in April, because that's what you got to do. You got to make it rain threes. Alabama did it last year, and it got really deep. And my question is going to be, does Bill Self finally lean into the three ball this year? Because he's got 4 or 5 guys that could really light it up. And so that's my overreaction.
Can I have a hot take again?
Yes.
If he doesn't lean into, I love that. I just noticed the JB's hot takes. I love that.
This might be a new weekly featured segment.
Let's make it happen. So here's the deal. If we don't lean into the three, if being a 3-point shooting team is not our identity this year, then I'm going to start the conversation of Bill Self needs to hang it up. Okay? I know.
Wow,
listen
that's
to me,
a hot take.
That's
a wild take.
I don't know about that one.
I don't know how the fan base is going to respond to that one.
Nobody's going to like that one.
No, it's because it's a big if. Listen, if he doesn't embrace the three this year with this squad, with these talented players, when is he ever going to embrace the three?
That's a good point. We've only seen it like one time, that Devontae Graham senior year.
And we've talked about in past recordings on this podcast about how basketball is changing overall. I mean, Steph Curry, thank you. Steph Curry changed basketball in a number of ways, and the three shot is the main way. He has made it popular. He has made it cool. He's made it sexy, and it's like, let's shoot as many threes as we possibly can, and that's how we want to win games, and that's how basketball is now. And look, Bill Self, I will always say I don't even care that I'm biased. He's my GOAT in terms of coaches. So let's not get twisted. But what I'm saying is, if he can't embrace the threes, it's time to adapt. Thank you. It's time to adapt. If he can't do it, I'm going to be like, man, I know. Wasn't that long ago when he said he didn't know how much longer he'd be coaching anyway. So I'd start looking at the names of potential candidates at that point. But that would be an overreaction. And I think we'd have to be losing a lot of games at that point to also have that reaction.
Sure.
But hey, I mean, people have started to question him in the past, as crazy as it sounds. This is one of those reasons why people might do it at some point this season if he doesn't embrace it.
So that's JB's hot take and overreaction if it doesn't go well. It's funny you mentioned the way the game's changed with the three ball, and I'm sitting here watching the Thunder Spurs and watching Chris Paul only pull up from mid-range because that's all he has left in his game offensively. But yeah, anyway. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. As we go through the rest of this episode, I've got a bunch of just questions and things I'm going to throw out to you guys, get some quick answers on, things like that. Let's start with the rotations and minutes. We've seen a couple different looks already. We've seen a couple different lineups. So I'm going to give you guys a couple questions here. First question I have is, who is your starting five? Not who you think Bill Self's going to start, not who how many, I think we're going to see multiple starting fives the first few weeks. But if you are the coach right now, who's your starting five? JB, let's go to you first.
My starting five is something that I've already talked about on the podcast in the offseason. I'm not changing it. We're going back to Hunter. We are benching KJ. We're going to have AJ Storr, Rylan Griffin, Zeke Mayo, and DeJuan Harris. Pretty simple. I mean, that's your experience. That's your three-point shooting. That's your it's not too clogged in the paint lineup. It's everything you need. Sign me up.
I can't hate on that one. I think that might be, I wouldn't say our best 5-man lineup, but the one that
Most
offensively you
efficient.
think puts up the most points and scores the most. So I like that. Austin, what's your 5?
It's kind of tough. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough. I mean, I don't know if there's a bad lineup you can make with this squad. I really don't. I mean, somebody, there's a couple people out there that are saying that Diggy should start over DeJuan. I don't know how I feel about that, but I mean, I guess that is a topic point of conversation.
Over under Diggy Coit starts 3.5.
Because we were talking about it like right before we went on the air, like, we could see many different lineups throughout the season. It may not be a consistent, starting 5 that we see all season long, and kind of like what we saw last year, except, the only big change we made was replacing Furphy with El Marco in the starting 5, and that turned out pretty well. But I'm going to roll. I mean, I don't know. I want to put KJ in the starting 5. I think
do. You have to, because it's.
I think you have to, but I mean, I don't know. If he's not in the starting 5, then I don't know if I'd be too terribly surprised. But of course, DeJuan, Hunter, KJ, and then my other two guys are going to be. I'm going to go with Zeke and Rylan.
Okay. So not
the
Stork.
Original 3, and then the 2 newcomers.
I think,
two of the newcomers.
Stork can definitely start. I mean, he had some good shots last night, and you mentioned Keane did make all of them, of course. I mean, not everybody made all of them, but I could definitely see AJ being in the mix for the starting 5. But I really loved what I saw from Zeke and Rylan, and I just think you have to start those 2 guys with the 3 that are back this year.
I think this is going to be one of the most interesting topics all season, because I do think the first couple of weeks, Bill Self's going to experiment some. I think there's going to be AJ's not doing what I want him to do, so I'm going to send him a message, and he sits to start the game. So it's Rylan Griffin out there at the 3 and Zeke at the 2 with DeJuan. I think we're going to see times where he goes, you know what, I want to pull some spark off the bench. So Zeke's going to come off the bench, and we're going to go bigger lineup with Griffin and Store, KJ, and Hunter. I think you're going to see that, hey, Diggy Coit's the hardest working guy in the gym, so he's getting the time to start. I also think once Shaq Moore gets back and healthy, we could see, depending on matchup, if we're going up against a backcourt that's got 2 strong, smaller guards, I could see DeJuan and Shaq Moore start. So I think we're going to see probably 5 or 6 starting lineups. But I said this to you guys earlier off air. I think the rotation in minutes to me is going to be a lot of matchups. Self said the other day last week that he ideally wants Hunter and KJ and even DeJuan to an extent to play 30 minutes or less. More the 2 big guys, DeJuan play 30 to 32. I think that's great, and I think in theory that's fantastic because you have the depth this year to do that. Is that going to happen? I think we'll still see plenty of games where DeJuan's playing 37 minutes a night, Hunter's playing 35 to 36. But I feel more optimistic that this is the year Bill Self decides to adapt and not just go with the 5 guys he trusts the most, but plays around with lineups and gets different looks. Because again, we have a lot of options this year. And I know a lot of people took his options comment as there wasn't confidence in the guys. I took it more as I've got options to pick from this year. Last year, there were no options. You had to throw Parker Brown out there. You had to throw Nick Timberlake out there. You had no other option. And they didn't work. Now, Parker Brown was okay. I don't think he was that bad at all. Serviceable for sure. He wasn't quite Mitch Lightfoot senior year, but he was serviceable. Yeah. This year, though, I think you've got a lot of options. So I'm looking forward to that. My next question for you guys, though, these are going to kind of all go hand in hand. We know the rotation, whatever it starts at, it's going to start dwindling down as the season goes along. So who's the odd man out this year, or the odd couple guys out? Who are the guys that you think are going to be fighting the most for minutes as the season progresses, especially once Big 12 play hits?
I mean, yeah, it's for me, it's Jamari McDowell. He's just down there. We know that he's scrapping for minutes at this point.
Possible redshirt candidate.
Yeah,
he is. I love what we saw from Passmore, but he's down there too. I mean, we, like Bill Self said, I mean, we've got so many options, so it's tough. Yeah.
So here, let me rephrase the question. Give me your top 8 to 9. Because it's probably we know even if he plays 10, 11 deep, which he could, that realistically the rotation is going to dwindle down to 8 for the majority of the minutes.
Well, I'll tell you, I didn't think that David Coit had a shot at my top 8 before these preseason, exhibition games. He has lit it up, and I'm like, I was asking Austin right before we hit record. I'm like, dude, did I miss something? Was this guy supposed to be really good? I went back on my notes on the roster. I have a notes app on my phone that's just got roster updates on there. And I revisited that, and I had in there 20 points per game, 33% from 3 or something like that. And I'm like, but that was probably at a smaller school. But that's a lot of points. Okay, we've seen guys come in with those kinds of averages at smaller schools, and it just doesn't translate at a program like Kansas, especially when you have to play behind other guys that have been in the program longer, that definitely have established roles. It's tough to kind of wiggle your way into the rotation,
especially in a Bill Self-ran team. It's just not how he operates typically. I mean, we saw how much that was for Remy struggling, coming here averaging close to 20 points a game, and it took the entire season to figure out how to play him, not only in Bill Self's system, but then adapt to Remy's play style to have him be effective. So, that is a challenge. So, I'm right there with you. Looks great on paper, but how translatable was it going to be?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't think he's just wiggled his way into the rotation. I think he has taken a bulldozer.
Self said
and knocked his way in.
I think Self said it a couple of weeks before the preseason early fall camp that he said we have at least 8 starters on this team.
Yeah.
And Diggy Coit, I think, is now 9, depending on how you look at it. And he said, he's deserving to start too, the way he's been the hardest working player. He said a couple weeks ago that Zeke was the best player on the team, but that Diggy looks like the best because he's the guy that when they step on the court, he's like, I'm beating all you mother effers out of the gym today because I'm going to work harder than anyone here.
That's right.
Austin, who's your couple? So top 8. So let's run through. We got DeJuan, Zeke, Rylan, AJ, KJ, Hunter, the 6 for sure.
Yep.
Now, you're throwing Diggy Coit out there. I think next thing you have to go is it Flory next or is it Shaq Moore next? I think Flory gets the edge right now because he's healthy. I think Shaq Moore, once he comes back, he's probably the 8th. So to me, I think Flory hits you at 9. I think there'll be games where we see a little bit more Flory, but I also think we're going to have games where KJ's back as the backup 5. So I think that's my 9, which would then leave Rakeem Passmore on the outside, Zach Clements on the outside, and Jamari McDowell.
I feel bad for Zach.
Dude, everybody was like, get him off the court last night.
His plus minus in that game was so bad.
The whole student section was like, why the heck is Zach Clements out there? He redshirted last season, which was kind of weird, because he transferred and then he came back. I don't know if that was Coach Self's way of saying, hey, you can't just leave and then come back. So you're going to redshirt this year.
Well, I think what I remember hearing too was that he reached out to Self after transferring to UC Santa Barbara, never stepped foot on campus. And from what I heard, that he had reached out to Self about coming back and saying, hey, this was a mistake. Yeah. Can I come back and just sit the year? So, I don't know how that went, but it's still kind of an odd fit. He did not look good against Washburn.
He looked really
4
good.
4 fouls really quick. Plus minus was terrible. It was.
Yeah, he looked really good in that 2022 season, the Natty year. I remember him, the one play of his that will always stick out to me is his 3-ball against Oklahoma. And that was a game where we won by 2 points, and it came right down to the wire. And Clements was the impact player towards the end. He got rebounds, made that big time 3 I just mentioned, and I don't know what else he did. I kind of forgot because that game was almost 3 years ago now, which is kind of crazy to think about. But I don't know if he's the same player that he was a couple of years ago.
Doesn't he have another year of eligibility after this?
Yeah,
eligibility wise, he's a junior. If I'm
correct. I believe so.
Yeah, because he redshirted.
He's a redshirt junior technically.
Look,
I think he's the odd man out because I think you have way more upside with Flory's athleticism defensive.
Yeah.
I mean, Flory's going to be a rim runner, defensive anchor guy for us, a shot blocker. So yeah, I think again, there's going to be guys that miss a few games. There's going to be games where maybe we see some Zach Clement spot minutes instead of Flory, and there's going to be games where Zach's on the bench for 4 games. So again, I think that's why it's interesting. So this leads me into my question on redshirt candidates, and we've talked about is Jamari McDowell's probably the most likely redshirt. But he's also, I think Bill Self said right now, he's probably ahead of just a couple of the guys because he's been there. I'm curious to see if anyone actually redshirts because Rakis Passmore you would think would be the next likely guy up, but something tells me that he's that freshman Ochai Abaji type where Bill Self might go, you know what? Put the kid in there. Let's see what he can do because these other guys are ticking me off. So like those to me are the 2 most likely redshirt candidates. Obviously, Elmarco's got his medical redshirt. I don't see anybody else that would take a redshirt unless it became a medical concern. But I wouldn't also be surprised if none of them redshirt this year. And again, going into I think it's next year, the year after, the NCAA passed the rule change now where teams are going to go from 13 scholarship players to 15. So I don't know how that's going to affect guys not just transferring, but redshirting, because if you have that many guys deep, you can't play that. I don't know. I think this could be the year that nobody redshirts. Wouldn't be shocked, though, if both Rakis Passmore and McDowell redshirt. But I think there's enough in each of these guys' games individually that they would all play. Now, had Zach Clements not redshirted last year, I think he'd be redshirted this
Yeah.
Any other quick thoughts on rotation minutes? Again, it might be, I don't know if we'll see Shaq more Monday or if we'll see him in the North Carolina. I expect we'll see him in the North Carolina game because I think Self's going to throw DeJuan and Shaq more different times on RJ Davis. But I think, depending on how he looks his first game back could really shake up the lineups as well. How about this? JB, you gave me your lineup you'd like to see. What do you guys think would be the most fun lineup to have on the court at one time?
Something that doesn't involve DeJuan Harris. Is that so bad to say?
Look, no, yes, that's quite. Hey, this is it's not the most efficient, the best defensive team, the best passing team. It's the most fun lineup you'd like to watch run up and down the court.
I don't mean to be anti-DeJuan. I just he's a pass first point guard. Nothing wrong with that. It's just not as exciting. You asked about fun. Diggy has to be out there. Good old David Coit shooting lights out from 3, even though he's a small.
He's got the green light every time he's on the court.
I love it. I think he has to be there. I think Zeke Mayo has to be there. Fan favorite, of course. Lawrence Kidd, of course. You got to put him out there. I think there's an argument for certainly AJ Storr, just with his hype coming into the season. KJ Adams, and then Hunter. I'd probably go with that. I guess Rylan Griffin gets the short end of the stick. Kind of wanted him there. But I think I only say that just because it's kind of like it's fun, but it's also the fan favorites type of lineup. It's a little mixture of both. I'm not saying it's the most efficient, but
I don't mind that. But I think that the answer is you got Hunter sits and Flory's in there at the 5. You're going Flory,
you're right.
Griffin, Storr, Zeke, and Diggy.
Right.
To me, that's
don't listen to
5
anything
man.
I just said.
That's the 5-man most fun lineup. And then if Rakis Passmore is on a nice roll, you could see him in there. Because I think there's a lot of athleticism on this team. You have the options. I think that'd be fun. What's the lineup that would frustrate you the most? The 5-man out there that you're going, oh my gosh,
Austin?
and you know Bill Self's going to throw this lineup out there a couple times, and it's going to be the lineup that you're going, oh my gosh, I just want to.
I don't really know. DeJuan, KJ Hunter, and
could it actually be the starting lineup? The actual starting lineup. Because it's got to have those 3: KJ, DeJuan, and Hunter.
The lineup that probably frustrated me the most would be those 3, and then I would say maybe AJ. I'd probably throw AJ in there because he's got to get accustomed to everything, right? We're hearing all these transitional problems right now, but he's transitioned so many times into different. We talked about it in the previous podcast, I believe, that AJ went to 3 different high schools and now he's gone to 3 different colleges. So I'd say maybe throw AJ in there, and then my 5th guy. Oh, man, I don't know. Clements, and maybe I'll throw Clements in there, even though he won't be in the starting five. I would just say
Clements and KJ at the 4 and the 5 for sure.
Oh my gosh, dude. Yeah, no, just with Clements though, yeah, he frustrated everybody in that arena. I could tell.
Okay, let's go to, since we were talking about the newcomers, let's go newcomer to shine. Who's the newcomer that you think is going to have the best season?
Zeke Mayo.
Yep, I can see it.
I think it's going to be Zeke Mayo. I mean, if you just think about his story and him being a hometown kid and everything, I just think it's inevitable that he has a great season. Of course, it'll be important for him to stay healthy, much like everybody else on the team. But I mean, he looked great. I talked about it to open up, but I mean, I was just impressed with what I saw from him. And then, we have to go back to mid-March as the season was still going on and everything. I sent out a tweet, and look, I don't expect anybody to ever read my tweets, much like Zeke Mayo, but I said specifically, Zeke Mayo, if you ever come across this tweet, this is a sign that you need to transfer to KU and come home. And I think a week or two later, he announced that he was going to enter the transfer portal, because I was like, well, I could see him entering the transfer portal if he wanted to go somewhere bigger. And it turned out that way. And then, I heard that KU was talking to him, and I was like, please bring him home. Please do it. I've watched him play at South Dakota State. The dude can shoot threes. I mean, he's just a playmaker. He really is. I mean, he can do it on both ends of the court. And I was like, if we're going to get anybody in the transfer portal, I want Zeke Mayo. And I don't know if Bill Self heard me. I highly doubt it. He's not paying attention to me, of course. But but I was like, please get Zeke Mayo. And it worked out that way. And we ended up getting him. And I was just so excited. And to see what he did last night and just how I feel about him and everything, I ultimately think he could be like our top newcomer this year.
I think once he gets in a groove and the shots starting to fall,
Yeah.
The hope is he doesn't have a cold stretch. But if he's in the groove and he's finding his rhythm, I think he's going to be.
I don't see that happening.
But JB, any different take than that?
I would have probably said Rylan Griffin, because I was higher on him than Zeke Mayo just coming in. Like, I understand, the hometown kid. I'm certainly all the potential in the world to have that role and to really surprise us. Man, I want Rylan Griffin to carry us all the way back to the Final Four and then some.
Yeah, me too.
I really want it. He's got experience. He's a lethal shooter. I already like his game so much.
Me too.
So I probably would have leaned that way, but plenty of good options on this youth squad.
And the frustration with this answer, because I think Flory's also a good candidate for that. He's going to have some exciting moments here and there. But I think the frustration with that answer is it should be AJ Storr. AJ Storr is the biggest transfer this offseason coming to Kansas, production-wise and all that being said. But I think he's also, and Spencer mentioned this in the last episode too, but player likely to disappoint. You got to feel like AJ Storr could be that guy. I mean, he's
the most awkward fit.
Yeah, he's going to be the Remy 2.0 of this team in the sense of he's going to have really good games, but he's also going to give you headaches. And I don't think he looked bad necessarily the first two games. We didn't really see a ton out of him. But if he's not playing hard defense and going after rebounds, like Bill Self's not going to play him. And if he's also just going ad lib on the offense and forcing up ugly jumpers, that can be frustrating. So like he to me is prime candidate for likely to disappoint. From that perspective. But I think he's also, like if you said, hey, which guy ends up with the most 30-point games this year? He's also one of the guys for that. Maybe Zeke, maybe him and Hunter. Those three are most likely to go for 30. But he's also, could he have the Andrew Wiggins nights where Wiggins disappeared for a stretch? Most gifted player on the court, but disappears for 10, 12 minutes. So I think he's my pick for that. But going on to this, outside of AJ Storr, who is the other player you guys think is the most likely to disappoint us this season?
All right. My answer for this very simple. It's DeJuan Harris. And I'm going to tell you why. Everybody, I'm just telling this to someone at work today. Everybody loves to talk about like the senior year bump and Bill Self developing his players. I've said it on the podcast before, and I'll say it again. DeJuan Harris, he is who he is. We're going to get what we've been getting. He's not going to change. This sounds very anti-Dewan. I don't mean for it to sound very anti-Dewan. I love the guy. I mean, he is a pass-first point guard, and he is just not going to take the big shots that we always want. He'll take some. And
he's not going to be the guy that coming down the end of the shot clock's going to pull Frank Mason or Devontae Grant or Devon Dotson. He's not that.
He is not Frank Mason. He's not going to turn into Frank Mason. He's not going to turn into Devontae Grant. He's the same player he always has been and always will be. He's going to make the other guys on our team stars. He's going to turn them into NBA talent. He's going to make them the priority, and it's just not going to happen. I feel like, we've seen in games last season where we were very frustrated about just how the game was going, and we were hoping for DeJuan to just take the darn shot and step up when no one else would. And sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't. I just don't see it this year, especially with all the star talent we have. I could easily see him regressing, averaging less points than he did last year. I absolutely think that's on the table. And if anyone thinks he's going to average more points, I think you're nuts. I'm sorry. I love DeJuan. I'm not trying to make it anti-DeJuan. I'm just saying he's not the guy that's going to take a step up in his final year on the bill.
And I think what you're saying is it's not that he's going to disappoint. Like his game on the court is going to be disappointing. I think it's is he going to make that fifth-year senior guard jump to being the guy? Yeah, that's not going to happen. Now, there are going to be plenty of games this year that DeJuan goes and wins for us. He's going to have plenty of moments that was a winning play by him. But yeah, I don't think he's going to be that guy that when nothing's working to go, all right, well, maybe DeJuan can just roll off of a pick and get to the bucket. Now, I think he's actually capable, and he's shown glimpses of where he can go get a bucket if need be, but it's not his comfort zone. It's not his game. So yeah, maybe it's not that he disappoints, but he doesn't take his game to that next level that you would like to see out of a guard, because we know when it comes to March, guards is really what wins you the tournament. So that leads me to the next one then is, and we're going to start going through these a little bit rapid fire as we close out, but who's the most important Jayhawk this year?
Austin.
This one I've had a hard time deciding who that is.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many options to choose from. There really is. But the most important Jayhawk probably, I mean, like last year it was KJ, right? And I want to say KJ again because, I mean, he's the guy that you would want out there on the court to get you a defensive player too, and especially, prevent, the guys from getting to the basket. I mean, I don't know if I want to. I'm okay with sticking with KJ. I mean, I don't mind repeating the same answer, the same thought that I had last year. I think, I obviously, there's going to be conversation, if is he going to start or not, but I really think he'll be important. I mean, he's, when we've needed him to step up, he's always stepped up. Right. So, I mean, I think he'll be our most important Jayhawk. I just think with his skill set and what he brings to the court, I think he'll be important. And if we needed to, if we're in a close game and we need a turnover or a stop or something, I feel like you've got to get KJ out there. But also with Flory too. I mean, obviously I don't know how many minutes he's going to ultimately end up getting. I mean, just based on what I saw last night, I could see him getting a ton of minutes. So you could make the argument that it could also be Flory. Excuse me. But I'm going to stick with KJ.
See, I was leaning that originally because of what you said about him last year, but I look at the roster this year, and I think if KJ has a step back, I don't think it hurts us that much. Now, flip side, I could see KJ actually being a step up, and as we'll get into about scores, I think there's a path for KJ to be the second leading scorer on this team, just with his play style. But to me, I've been going back and forth on it's Hunter or AJ Store.
It's Hunter.
I think Hunter is 1A and AJ Store to me is 1B, because you brought AJ Store over to go be a bucket getter. He's the guy that at the end of the shot clock, nothing's working. He can go isolation and draw a play up for himself to get a bucket, to shoot over a guy in the middle of the paint. It's like I go back and forth on those two. I think it's gonna be Hunter because everything's gonna start with Hunter offensively. So if he's struggling, that's going to be a problem. Now, last year when he struggled, it was a major problem because Kevin McCullough also wasn't available. This year, I think if Hunter struggles, we've got other guys, but the whole flow of the game is still going to be dictated by Hunter Dickinson. Bill Self has in the let's start with the guy in the paint. Even when you have guys like Ochai Agbaji and Christian Brown, it was still we got to run the offense through David McCormick first. So I think it's there, but to me, I think AJ could be that guy too, because what he brings to the table offensively is something KU really hasn't had much of in the Bill Self era, that shot creator that's not a primary point guard. As I say that, the other thought that me still comes to mind is, could it still be DeJuan Harris? Because DeJuan is the ultimate facilitator. He is the senior on the team, so does everything run through him. So I think this one's up in the air. You could argue me any other way, but JB, you say you think it's Hunter as well.
It's Hunter for me. I thought we looked so disjointed against Arkansas, and my first thought instantly throughout the game, I should say, instantly and throughout the game was, man, this is what we're going to look like every minute that we don't have Hunter on the floor. I'm not signing up for this. Take me off. Like move me out.
Yeah.
I'm not happy about it. So I feel like Hunter could be just an instant reaction from that Arkansas game. But I mean, we kind of struggled without him last year too.
Yeah, so. And I think the other way to look at this too is of those guys, again, play the game of if they took a step back, which would hurt the team most. Like I could see Hunter, average 18-ish a game last year. Maybe he dips down to 15 to 16. But if he takes a step back and looks worse, I think that hurts us. If KJ takes a step back, you've got some options. If DeJuan takes a step back, you've got a couple guys at guard that can take over. I'm not going to put Rylan Griffin or Zeke Mayo on that yet because I think they're going to be more like prime role players. So yeah, that's why I think you can go Hunter, because if he takes a more than a small step back, there's a big problem, because you're not going to throw Flory out there to be your 5-man savior if Hunter's struggling as a freshman. And you don't want to go back to having to run small ball KJ at the 5 every night. So yeah, I think Hunter's the question there. Another one I have for you: no pressure, no diamonds. Who on the team this year, coaching staff, players, new guys, returners, who do you think has the most pressure on them this season to perform at their best?
Is the answer still Hunter? I mean,
yeah,
with
so.
The expectations of him being, he was the top transfer, and he comes in, and what were we saying on the podcast a year ago, going into the last basketball season? We were saying it's natty or bust, and Hunter is about to give us a natty. And when we talked about him potentially staying for 2 years, we were like, oh my God, we're going to get 2 national titles in a row. I think it's all on Hunter, and I think that's obviously the 2 in a row is not happening with Hunter, but I think it still falls back on him.
Yeah. I think my second answer to this would actually be Zeke Mayo. Not because he's the best player on the team necessarily, but I think there's a lot of storylines with he's the hometown kid. Everyone wants to see him perform. Division II step up, not D2, but one NAIA step up. We saw what happened with Nick Timberlake last year. It affected. Couldn't do anything.
Zeke Mayo is not Nick Timberlake, I can assure you that.
So I think there's a decent amount of pressure on him to not necessarily prove himself, but to show that he belongs in a league like this, to where the competition's at a higher level. So I could see him having some pressure. And then again, I'm myself putting pressure on AJ Storr, being the top offensive threat. Hunter's going to be the offense is going through Hunter, but on the court, AJ Storr should be the biggest offensive threat as a dual threat kind of guy. So I think that's where I'm going next. Okay, let's do Flory question: Badunga dunks or Flory flush? What's the motto this year when he's slammed down?
What's slipping out when you're calling games, Austin? What's going to slip out?
I'm gonna go with Badunga dunks. I mean, you can throw it down for sure. I don't remember if he had a dunk or two. I think he had an alley-oop or two last night, which was really awesome to see him just have that, first bit of like what it feels like to, throw it down and now and feel it out, because everybody was so excited to see that happen. In fact, I think he had 2 of them. But
yeah, he did have a couple alley-oop dunks. And
yeah,
I think he had a put.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I think he had a not necessarily like a putback, but an offensive rebound, went right back up with it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what I was also kind of thinking about too. Like Flory can get the rebounds, of course, and having as tall of a guy as he is a game changer. And I was kind of thinking about this too. Like if Hunter fouls out in a game, which is inevitable, it's going to happen at some point. Which game is it going to be in? We don't know. It'll be maybe in some of those big time games. I feel great that we have another guy behind Hunter that KU can throw in there and be like, okay, like Dickinson fouls out, it's really not the end of the world. We've got another guy that's just as tall, if not taller than Dickinson. I think he's 6'10". Is that right? I think he even grew in like an inch.
I'm pretty sure that was my
once he
take.
got to
'Cause I'm pretty sure Flory has grown an inch and a half or two.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Because they showed the preseason team photo, and he was the same
Yeah.
height as Zach Clements, who's listed at 6'11". When Flory was signing, he was listed at 6'8" to 6'9". So either Zach Clements is shorter than 6'11", or Flory's gained a couple inches, or Flory's shoes are just thicker than what Zach wears. But I do think he has grown.
6'10".
Yeah, I think he has grown at least an inch since he's committed to Kansas for sure. But no, I didn't listen to the broadcast from Brian Haney on the last two. I feel like I can hear Brian Haney saying, "All right hand Flory flush," or "flush from Flory," or something like that. But I think the Dunga Dunk sounds more fun. But I think I can hear him saying, "And a monster flush from Flory," or something like that.
Yeah,
so I think that's
for sure. Yeah.
All right, last couple here. Let's go through leading scores. Give me your top 3 scores for the season, averages, and give me what you think they will average.
Hunter, Zeke, KJ.
Not AJ Store.
I mean, because I don't know how many minutes he's gonna get.
Yeah, I don't think you're quite as high on AJ as most of the fan base is coming into the season. I think you're realistic with that. It might be a struggle for him.
Right. We were talking about like which players are you like most excited to see play out there. I said AJ Store, of course, right? But I just think with the rotation and everything, I think ultimately KJ could be in that mix. But who knows? I mean, I'm glad that like we're talking about like the fact that like there could be another guy or two who could be in the mix to be the top 3 scorers on the team, which, I don't know if we would have had that conversation last year. So I think it's a good situation to have and a good problem to have.
Yeah, I think until we have the starting lineup figured out, it's going to be hard to actually predict. But yeah, I probably would have said Hunter with, 18, KJ with 15.
15, yeah.
And I would have said probably Rylan Griffin after that at like 13.
Yeah, this is why I think it's a hard one to predict. I think KU legitimately has the chance to have 5 guys average double digits this year.
100%.
So I think that second, third, and fourth spot could be muddled up. Like KJ, I could easily see getting 13 to 14 again. Rylan Griffin, I think, could average about 9 to 11, 9 to 12, and he'll have a couple games where he goes, 5 for 7 from 3. Zeke Mayo, to me, is the obvious answer is from an offensive scoring capability standpoint. So he could average 13 to 14. I think AJ Store's the wild card. Does he average 11? Does he average 17? What does he look like? So, yeah, I think K's got options. And then, heck, he might not have the amount of games played, but if Diggy Coit's getting 7 threes up a game, even if it's in 10 minutes, he could average close to 10. So I think KU has the opportunity to be a very high scoring team this year. So yeah, I'm curious about that one.
Please.
Last one I'll end you guys with before we get out of here is when it all comes down to it at the end of the year, expectation, just like it is every year, is championship or bust, Final Four bust, Big 12 championship, all that kind of stuff. Who is this year's Mr. March? Who is that guy down the stretch that we lean on to go out, win us a 6-game stretch in March?
Diggy.
Rylan.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, Rylan could be I mean, unless he's in the starting 5, but I mean, I ultimately think it's going to be Diggy.
Diggy, you're going Rylan. I'm gonna go Zeke. I think Zeke's 3-point shooting will take over in March. Again, I
Talk
feel
about the
bad. Like
storyline.
I
I
keep
can see
saying
that
this
happening.
should be AJ Store's. The guy keeps saying all these questions I'm asked, the answer in my mind's going, this needs to be AJ Store. But
Yep.
realistically, it just doesn't feel until we see it that that's the case. But yeah, I think all three of those are viable candidates. Those of you listening later, watching this later, would love to get your thoughts on your Mr. March candidate or the answers to any of these questions we threw out there. Who are the guys that you think are going to lead the team in scoring? Who's your odd man out in the lineup in the rotation? Who's going to be your fan favorite this year? Who's going to be the guy you look forward to playing the most? Who's the guy you're going to trust most? All that. There's so much to get into. KU basketball is just several days away from the start of the regular season. Then, of course, they've got North Carolina at the end of next week, and then just the gauntlet of their schedule gets going. We have an exciting episode coming up. We will be having a former player guest coming on the podcast, hopefully next week. We're still going to finalize the schedule on that with the game Monday night, but excited about that, and hopefully he is the first of several that we can get on this season and some other KU basketball affiliate connections. So be on the lookout for that, and the best way to know when that's happening is, of course, to subscribe right here on our YouTube channel at KC Sports Authority, at KCSA Pod. Follow us on all of our social medias, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at KCSA Pod as well. Hit the like button on these episodes so that other Jayhawk fans like yourself can find the podcast, and do us all a favor and send it to a friend. Help us expand. We're over 1,000 subscribers. It would be amazing if we got to like 1,500 by the end of basketball season going into March Madness. And you guys can certainly help us with that. And we'd be super appreciative of it. And if we do that, we'll have a couple more giveaways throughout the season. I have some nice memorabilia in my closet ready to be given to a lucky fan this year as we go through the season. So make sure you guys come back for all of that. We appreciate you joining us on this one. Again, if you guys have any questions you want to ask us about the basketball season, the team, players, anything like that, feel free to send it our way so we can start adding it into our weekly episodes. But that'll wrap it up for this one. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. And as always, rock chalk.
Rock chalk.
Rock chalk.